You are now tuning in to the Val and Val Show, where conversation is art, art, art. Conversation is art, conversation is art. You should chime in, ain't no telling what to spark on the Val and Val Show. Ain't no telling the Val and Val Show. You know, ain't no telling where we go on the Val and Val Show. Ain't no ceiling, cause the art of conversation is the flow. It's that creativity available when we speak, available in our homes, available in the streets. We just trying to get it sparking and take it a little deeper. Keep it casual while fireside chatting with our people. Yeah, we take it a little deeper. It get hot when we fireside chatting with our people. Cause conversation is art, conversation is art. You should chime in, ain't no telling what'll spark on the Val, the Val and Val Show. The Val and Val Show.
Well, hello. I may be stuttering around tonight because Restream has updated, so I gotta learn how to navigate all of this stuff that's changed. I've been practicing it, but we're gonna be okay. Hey, it's part of life, trying to figure out all this stuff. So how y'all doing tonight? How y'all doing tonight? Um, Hopefully you saw the flyer and you know it's gonna be hot and heavy up in here tonight. So just get ready. Just get ready. That's all I can tell you to do is just get ready for a very candid conversation on Conversation is Art. So hope everybody's doing well. Please like and share with everyone as we're going to have a phenomenal show tonight. But before we get started, I'm just going to do some quick announcements and acknowledgments. As we know, it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. We want to encourage all women to make sure you are doing self-exams and get out there and have your mammograms. I was on an educational Zoom last night, and you all, breast cancer is one of the leading cause of death for Black women in the United States as well as in Alabama. And we are more likely to get one of the more deadly forms of cancer. So we want to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves as well. So please get out there and please get your examinations. Also, if you're looking for employment, this particular company, God Sitting Partners LLC Home Care Services, are looking for some caregivers, and we need people who are honest, who care about taking care of people that are sick. And if you got sticky fingers, they don't need you to apply. And if you got anger management issues and have a tendency toward abusing people, you don't need to apply. Okay, we need some good people showing up. Take care of these people. So look, tonight I'm just gonna jump right in, and look, I hope I can bring him in right. As I said, Restream updated on me. Woo, woo, woo. There you
Hey.
are. There you
Hey.
are. Listen, y'all know
Hey.
I ain't even tell y'all nothing about him. Look, this man right here, Mr. Gerrel Jones, and y'all so funny, y'all. My husband name is Terrell. Uh, and how many times have I called your number using voice call,
Right. Right.
trying to call my husband? I still got to figure out a way because whatever reason, when I say Terrell, it hears Gerrel. So
And you
I
know
don't know.
what's interesting about that is that Siri never says my name right. So I guess they hear it right, but they don't.
How do they pronounce it?
Gerald.
Gerald.
Yeah.
Funny you should say that. If I if I say Terrell on some, depending on which car I'm in,
Hmm.
but they'll say calling Terrell. But if I say call Terrell, they don't understand it. So make it make sense. So how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
Doing
And you?
good. I'm great. I'm great. Look, you all, this is Mr. Gerrel Jones, Executive Director of Renew Birmingham. And if y'all don't know what Renew Birmingham is by now, I'm gonna write y'all up because you ought to know. Because he's been on here a couple times and we don't explain it to you. Hey there, Eleanor, my favorite. I call Eleanor my favorite fan because she's been with me with Valton from the beginning. So she's always here. So what's been going on?
Well, putting the neighbor back in neighborhood, trying to reduce violence, crime, and raise the level of quality of life in uh, our underserved community over here, Ainsley Highlands, Wylam, and Tuxedo. You know,
Okay.
it really
Okay.
is a
So
it really is a 24/7 thing.
okay. So putting the neighbor back in the neighborhood. Now, what does
Right.
that mean?
Yeah. Well, I don't know how many people are aware that there are no models for community revitalization that have ever worked without an investment from the residents in the community. You can't
Okay.
revitalize a community without the people in the community doing some of that work, investing in some of that change. And in fact, what you usually end up doing is just throwing resources into a pit. Because if you don't change the way that people interact with each other in the neighborhoods, in the communities that you're trying to affect, then nothing you do is going to make a difference. Neighboring is a major factor in how community culture changes for the better or for the worse.
Yeah. Interesting you would mention that putting the neighbor back in the neighborhood. I told him, I said, maybe I'm a abnormally or something, because one of the key things in me buying two homes was that, and even when I lived in an apartment, I was a student at UAB, I always wanted to know the people that live definitely, right around me in the apartment, because stuff happens. I was always that kid. I was like, y'all, if my car ain't moving or you don't see me, I want somebody to notice that and be concerned about that. So
Yeah.
that was actually one of my prayers, and God granted my request in both neighborhoods that I have lived in, and I fortunately lived in diverse neighborhoods, even when I lived in Inslee. And I ride by my house in Bellevue Heights, and I just look at it sometimes, because my reason for moving out of Birmingham was not that I was afraid of the crime. It was the school system. Now, at almost 59, y'all, my birthday this Saturday. Praise
Congratulations, happy
God.
birthday.
And I would have ran for the school board. I would have handled that differently. But I was a young, 30 some, almost 40 some year old. And I was like, you know what? I ain't got to put up with this. But even before I met you, I realized, oh, Val, you should have stayed and made a change.
Yeah.
Now, on the other side of that coin, as it relates to my children's education
Right.
and where they are in life right now, I made a great decision, because just the access of what they had in Hoover school system has afforded both of them to be working in actually their dream jobs.
Yeah. So I mean, you bring up a really important conflict that people would have faced during the times of the great migration of Black people out of underserved communities into uh,
Hmm.
suburban Birmingham. So Black flight was a major contributor to the decline of the community. So I think people need to understand how this happens and how that conflict that you describe was dealt with by some people, and how some people never even thought of it as a conflict. It was not an option ever to stay in the community. The whole mantra
Hmm.
back in the '80s, was get out of the hood, get out of the hood, get out of the hood. And even before that, when things were bad, you wanted to get out of the hood. And I guess that happened as a result of the civil rights movement having some effect on the ability of Black people to
Hmm.
move from the place of their trauma. But here's some of the things that we did not consider, and you could probably only consider in retrospect. The city of Birmingham's been here for 153 years.
Yeah.
And we can say that more than likely we can claim that it's probably had an opportunity to become a good place to live for everyone since about 1970. However, the things that
Hmm.
happened in 1970 and 71 that triggered Birmingham's decline, were done purposefully, and you have to know that they were done purposefully in order to be able to get any motivation to counteract it. So in 1971, U.S. Steel closed its doors in Inslee, and
Yeah.
scaled down significantly. Well, there was a time with the steel industry being what it was out here that Inslee was the number one producing neighborhood or community in the
Hmm.
state of Alabama. Right. So there was no more money that was coming out of Alabama than was coming out of here. But when U.S. Steel closed its doors, 45% of the population basically left. We've lost 160,000 people
Wow.
no, watch this, failing schools, high crime, high blight.
Yeah.
Okay, so none of those things are attractive right now. We're top three in homicides. We're top five in blight, and we're at the bottom of the education spectrum in a state that's ranked 47. I'll tell you why that's important. Why that last part is important. Your education system feeds your workforce.
Yeah.
So when people graduate from high school, and let me say for the record, No Child Left Behind is one of the worst education policies that for underserved communities, Black people particularly, that's ever been instituted. When you can graduate someone who can barely read, when our numbers say that 90% of our kids can't read on the eighth grade level when they get there, and 98% can't do eighth grade math, right? These are things that should be concerning, because these are the people that are going to be in your service industry. They're going to become your police officers. And sometimes they're going to slip through and end up going to a college that's going to, and many of us, I went to college. I know that a good portion of college is a racket. I mean, the
Yeah.
courses that you don't have to take it.
Most
And there,
definitely.
there are grades that you're going to get that you didn't earn. And that's just a reality. And so many of those people that are not functionally literate in many ways, socially literate, are going to be in positions of authority. And if we don't address our failing schools, and the fact that many of the kids that are going to these failing schools are coming from traumatic backgrounds. And so there's a chemical called cortisol. It's a
Yeah.
hormone that is a stress hormone. What many people don't understand is that stress hormone in the earliest stages of development and in the womb can wreak neural havoc. I mean, the brain literally, it attacks the brain cells of infants, and so many kids they start out behind the eight ball anyway. We're diagnosing them with stuff that's more than likely just their responses to stress. Kid grows up with in a single parent home, which is not going to
Yeah.
be as functional as a two parent home, and even sometimes when there's two parents, they're not as functional as they should be, right? So
Yeah.
then you got high rates of homicide and crime in the community, right? Bullying in school. Oftentimes you have teachers that don't want to be there. I know this because I'm heavily invested in the schools around here, and there are some teachers and administrators that literally do not want to be in the
Well,
system.
let's pause right there and let's dig down a little deep on that. So, what do you think has happened? Is it that the teachers feel they have no control, or are they just buying their time to
Well,
retire?
let's
Or
think
I mean,
about
it's
it.
not just one thing; it's multifaceted. But
Yeah, because I sincerely believe that everybody that goes to school, goes to college to learn to be a teacher, has an interest, and they have a vested interest in having success in their craft. I think that the systems that they're being placed in, because of the communities that these school systems are in, is hazardous. It's difficult. It's overwhelming. You're going to get kids come to school hungry, can't stay awake in class. They're
yeah,
angry. They don't have social skills. They can't pay attention, right? And there's only so long that you can live up under that. I've said the same thing about police officers. Police officer leaving his family, going home. Going out to the job to risk his life every day for people that don't care for him. That's going to be some significant duress. He needs to come out of the field. It's 6 years maximum. You need to come out of the field because
yeah.
your heart just can't deal with that. And when you're looking at teachers having to deal. See, before the child gets to DHR, a lot of times the school teacher is the one that saw whatever the problem was. And so she's got to deal with that trauma, or he's got to deal with that trauma. And he's got to deal with the fights at school. Got to
Yeah.
deal with the kids with drug issues. Got to deal with the kids so it's just overwhelming. It's not, and then they don't make no money,
You
right?
got
So,
that right.
so they're going
Because I
into
think the
this.
start is the starting salary for police. Did I see something like that giving away to my 50K? I was like, are
Yeah,
you?
yeah,
I wouldn't
yeah.
be one.
Oh,
I'm just
that's
gonna
yeah.
be real.
Dude, it's gone up in the last 20 years. I can remember when it was 30, right? So yeah, so I don't think that people are just going into these jobs being hateful. I think that the culture that they're trying to serve in, not understanding what, really what it is that you're dealing with, because we deal with symptoms. We look at
Yeah.
the outcomes, the homicides, the crime. We're not dealing with the causes.
The
And
root
just
cause for
recently,
sure.
the mayor's office issued some statements about root causes. Well, here's what we don't like to hear about: the roots of causes. In a community, at the root is the family. So
Yep.
nobody wants to say that their family is dysfunctional, that the values that their family has and the way that that's expressed and presented in the world is counterproductive. Nobody wants to say that, right? So when it comes to the institutions that affect the families, schools, and then churches or faith organizations. So basically, every one of the people in the city of Birmingham at some point is going to come through our family. They're going to be born and raised in our family. Then they're going to come through our schools, and they're going to come through our faith organizations. And then they're going to go become whatever it is that they become based on those experiences. Am I right?
Yeah, you're right. I
Right.
mean, yeah,
Okay.
that's the
So if that
trajectory of it.
Okay, so if that person is not healthy, right, would it be reasonable to say that the family, the schools, and the churches made some contribution to that, whether it was overt contribution or purposeful or passive contribution?
Yeah. Or
Okay,
either omission
well that's
contribution.
that's the passive, that's the passive
Yeah.
contribution, right? Because apathy is manifesting itself in these communities like this in a very specific way that's causing a problem. If you live in a community that has local schools that are on the failing list, if you believe that those children are not going to impact your life as adults,
Yeah.
that is unrealistic.
Very much
And
so.
and to not invest in what they might contribute when you know that the schools are failing, right? It's not like I don't know that the schools are failing. If I know that my schools are failing and under resourced, then as an adult human being, never mind the fact that I'm a Christian, say I love Jesus, I, I need to be investing in what will make my community better.
Well,
That's
let me
just,
let me ask you this, because when I came to the meeting last week, and those stats that you actually just shared about Birmingham, but I want you to talk a little bit about when you gave the historics about that. Blew my mind. From 1871 to 2024,
yeah.
nothing has really changed about where Birmingham
Well,
actually
and
is ranked per se, despite it was called, it was a magic city. But I think you said something to the effect.
yeah,
Did you say Birmingham was built based on like really a concentration type
yeah. So
camp?
so so Birmingham was built as a work camp.
Okay.
So the steel industry, um, some people came down from Pennsylvania, and basically the story goes. The short version is that discovered that all the elements were here to make steel,
Mm-hmm.
and so they began in Jones Valley and built Birmingham around their steel, the excavation of the ground. And so so many people came. Alabama was extremely rural. Now understand
Yeah.
that Birmingham is only 6 years, is 6 years after the Civil War. It wasn't here when Atlanta was here. It wasn't, so Birmingham just pops up around this industry. People start flooding into the city looking for job opportunities. Rural people, largely, except
Yeah.
for the people who were educated that came down here. So you can actually see the difference in housing, and when you look at places like Ensley, Bellevue Heights,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
was a white neighborhood, and so Ensley Highlands was a white neighborhood. And so you can see the differences between the houses that are over in these neighborhoods and the shotgun houses that were built closer to the mill, where you could stack people up on top of each other, and you
Yeah.
could see through from the front through to the back. So,
Yeah.
1871, she pops up. For Black people, you're still in the middle of of Black codes, even though it's after the Civil War. You still, policy doesn't change people's minds. You
Definitely
know what I'm
don't.
saying? Right.
Laws
So,
don't correct
so
behavior.
yeah. So after slavery, you had sharecropping that many people came into, and then with this industrial age, many people that were wanting a greater opportunity came out of that sharecropping into, and this is the story of my family, into Birmingham to work in the pipe companies and everything that had to do with steel. Well, they weren't getting the same opportunities, right? Because all the way we know that all the way up until 1950, it was legal to redline, so Black people could
Yeah.
only buy property in certain places, right? And that property wasn't going to be the same type of value because it's going to be near the railroad tracks, right near the plants where the water was going to be nasty,
True.
and so you put the Black people over here, and you let the white people who run the organizations, run the mills, run the jobs, you put them in different places, and you stagger, their income. You can put them where their income will fit, right? And then in 1928, Mountain Brook was built for the old ultra rich, to separate from even more, right, to keep even more strata. So Birmingham goes through its issues with the civil rights, and then in 1970, when the schools are fully integrated, U.S. Steel decides to close its doors. Right. Well, that eliminated a bunch of jobs. It hit black people really, really hard in this
Yeah,
community. And
true.
Inslee lost about 90% of its population over the next, 50 years. Right. So, and again, the city of Birmingham, UAB would rise up as the major employer in the state, but the city of Birmingham would continue to lose population from then up until now, and the economy would get more difficult for Black people, because the lack of education, the lack of investment in
Yeah.
education. But the biggest thing I mentioned earlier was Black flight. So when white people set the standard for what success was, and U.S. Steel was no longer here, and you had to get higher education to be in that strata. The idea was to become as successful as they were because they set the
Yeah.
standard, right? Okay, so now I want to live in a house like them. I want to have what they have, and none of this is bad. I want to understand the education that they have, and I want to live in safety, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. However, if you neglect that, the idea of getting out of the hood means leaving people who can't, right?
Yeah.
Now, see, here's where I as a Christian, I look back, and hindsight is 2020, right? And with what I know now, there's no way that I could have left. And I know people say that well, yeah, you don't know. Well, this is what I did in 2017. I bought my house in the neighborhood that had the highest number of homicides, and I live there now, and I've been there ever since. And the objective is to create value, because I know that the leaving that my foreparents did, or forefathers did, or extended family, Black folks, they took the cream of the crop with them, and they started to pay their intellectual capital, their sweat equity, and their financial resources into other tax bases. And so they
True.
built up the suburbs. They helped to build up the suburbs. But the disinvestment from where they came from is showing itself today in high rates of violence, high rates of blight, and a poverty-stricken education system. And another thing about it that's missing, or that's happening, is the death of Black churches. Now, nobody wants to say that that's a reality, but the fact is the city of Birmingham has 700 plus churches. Now, not all of them are active, but some of them you can actually ride down the street over here and see that they're right across the street from each other. And I'm on record as saying that I don't believe that God called 15 pastors to a 10-block area and told them not to talk to
I
each other or
agree.
have a strategy.
Now, so is this 700 churches in the metro area?
So I pulled it up. Actually I posted it because people didn't believe me when I said it, right? But I don't. I think it's more than that in the extended in the metropolitan area that includes the suburbs. I want to say there's a few thousand, right? So no, that would be just inside of the city of Birmingham.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, because you were talking about how the neighborhoods were built, definitely over by U.S. Steel, quote on TCI Ironworks. I actually got that history, and I'm sure you've heard this book, Carry Me Home, by Diane. I think it's Diane McWhorter, who was born and raised in Birmingham. I mean, in Mount Brook, and she came back to confront her dad to ask if he was a member of the Ku Klux Klan. And she got history of Birmingham, I guess, from the inception. And one of the things she's talked about is that housing. Because in there, I think when I showed where I live in Bellevue Heights, I think that's where the hospital workers, because they built Lord Nolan, TCI.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then, as you said, as you get right up by Lord Nolan, you got the big antebellum homes, and
Mm-hmm.
then you
Mm-hmm.
got the brick home. The majority, a lot of the homes in Bellevue Heights were brick, and that
Right.
those were for
Right.
your, I guess you say, your middle class
Upper level
hospital workers,
management.
upper
Yeah.
level people. And
Yeah.
then when you got to Inslee Highland, you can start seeing more wooden houses, but they were
Mm-hmm.
nice houses. And then
Right.
as you got further back, that's
Yeah.
where you saw the shotguns and the double
Right.
tenant
Yeah.
homes.
Yeah.
and everything. And you all, if you don't have that book, it's a wonderful book to just read the history. And I always laugh about it. And I said, because she was white, she was able to get access to documents that a
Yeah.
black person would not have gotten. Now, the people on the run out of Birmingham, over the mountain, everywhere, because she gave a history of every neighborhood and how every neighborhood, as you said, spun out from Mount Brook was all because of discrimination in some way.
Right.
Mount Brook people like, you're not good, so then came Vestavia, then came Homewood, and it just kind of filtered down. Well, look, Gerrel, let's talk about, this increased crime or
Mhm.
violent crime
Right.
and what you're trying to do. Share with what you've been successful at doing in those four neighborhoods with your Renew Birmingham and putting the neighbor back in the neighborhood just by simply getting people to get to know each other and talk
Yeah.
to each other.
Okay, well, I don't want to say that it's as simple as getting people to know each other. Renew
I know.
Birmingham is a collective impact resource organization. So the first thing was to not reinvent the wheel. So while
Mm-hmm.
there's 700 churches, there's also 400 nonprofit organizations. Now, and
Okay.
there's a lot of replication of services. In other words, somebody pops up and says, I need to get me a nonprofit. Well, what's your service going to be? We're gonna minister to the kids. We're gonna serve. Okay, well, there's already 200 nonprofits doing
Yeah.
youth services. So why not just join one that's already in existence? And see, we have this thing about chronic uh, individuality, right? And competition that gets in the way. We want to, instead of being what's good for the community, we want to be good at what we do. You get what
Yeah.
I'm saying, right? So
Gotcha.
it's not the same thing. So um, we didn't want to create an organization that was doing the same thing that everybody else was doing. So the idea is to access resources from existing organizations. Some of them have their own finances and they don't need me to help them build their capacity. Some of them would need for me to finance them to help build their capacity. So we will pay other organizations per client per service to do the service out here. Right now, why? What kind of services? Everything. We have 5 umbrellas: housing, adult education, workforce development, youth services, jobs and transportation, and what's called community health and wellness, which is the big piece that involves community engagement. And we don't believe that you can change the community culture without engaging the people face to face. So our philosophy is to immerse in the community. I mentioned earlier that I bought my house in the neighborhood that had the highest number of homicides. The reason for that is
Yeah.
because I know I need to be in the community in order to affect the community. You can't really do it from the outside in because it takes social influence. For those
Yeah.
of you who do not know about social influence is the most powerful influence known to man. But you cannot have social influence without contact with other people in some way, shape, or form, whether it's visual, whether it's vocal, whatever. In order to move them, it has to be people to people. And there's no more power than the time and attention that you spend in a person's space. That
Gotcha.
is going to be really, really powerful because you get to not only share a message, but you get to model the behavior. That's why being in the community as a minister is so important. If people just see you on Sunday, right, then you're not going to really be able to impact them. You may give them a good feeling, but you're not going to be able to impact their daily life. And so
Well, let me
that's
ask you this. What do you think is the apathy with pastors and churches and just Christians in general? Because we are the church in the street. We're supposed to be going, but with pastors who are generally respected leaders and some that have influence, what do you think the
okay.
issue
So
is?
you said that there's apathy. I'm not sure that I would describe what I experience coming out because I can't speak about every pastor.
Okay.
And I don't believe that every pastor is not effective in their ministry. I believe that there are many people who are. However, that does not mitigate that clearly the majority of our faith institutions are not functioning in a way that causes any healthy impact or an advancement of the quality of life of people. And I know people say, well, the gospel ain't about the quality of life, it's about saving your soul. Okay, I read the book, right?
Oh, yeah, it's about your quality of life too.
Okay, 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 okay,
It's a great part.
okay.
But this is what people fail to realize. Your mental health will affect your spiritual health and your physical health. This
Yeah,
is what I call this. You got what they call the Trinity. Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, right?
Yeah.
I consider our Trinity for our being
Body,
is
soul, and spirit.
spirit. Yeah, spirit. Yeah, it all
Spirit,
goes
soul, and body.
together. So
Yeah.
if you're spiritually depleted, the physical and the mental is going to be
Yeah.
affected. If
Let,
so the
let me
in the
stop you.
finance,
Let me interrupt you. I know I'm interrupting you, Val, but
that's
let me
okay.
tell you. So to answer your question, I did not learn about Jesus, the real Jesus, growing up going to church. Never met him, didn't hear about it. Right now, I heard Bible stories, and there were sermons on call. Right, but there were you could actually, when I was growing up, you knew that you was gonna hear dry bones in the valley at least one time a year. Right,
Yeah.
and you know what I'm saying. So
Daniel
it
lying them, the
yeah,
Hebrew
yeah, yeah,
boys in the
yeah,
fire
yeah,
furnace.
yeah. And so things were done in a way that were completely disconnected from the experience that I was having. So we had Sunday vacation Bible study, and we get a Bible study that was put together in Colorado by some white people that don't have any understanding of the trauma that I'm having to deal with. In fact, the fact that blacks were taught the gospel initially by white supremacists is a significant plays a major role in how black people understand the Bible today. And the Bible is not about race, but because it was made to be a tool for manipulation for people, right? It can't be ignored what the ripple effects of that manipulation were, right? So what we ended up with after the civil rights movement, when the church was very, very active, and even before that, many of the slave revolts were led by people who had read the Bible, slaves who had read the Bible and understood that God was not interested in them being in bondage.
He
Um,
was a deliverer.
right. When the civil rights movement effectively took the responsibility of social change out of the church's hands via the murder of Martin Luther King, which spread fear all over the place. And we had some heroes like Shuttlesworth and McPherson, and people who were willing to face those fears. But because things had gotten a little bit better, the laws changed. We didn't really raise up any significant leaders that were going to be people who were interacting to develop strategies to affect the community any better. It was all a free for all. Okay, we're free now. Let's go. Let's leave. And many of the pastors left as well, because many of the
Yeah.
pastors in these communities don't live here, right? So again, that exodus took the cream of the crop of our our communities out to other neighborhoods. So then, when the government made it illegal, and they changed that, but it was illegal for pastors to say anything about politics or to mention anything about elected officials. For a long time, I know that black folks, we still did it, right? But for the most part, right, there were so many that got away from it, and we started saying things like, well, that's things of the world. Well, we deal with spiritual things. And so there began to be this agreement that anything that happened with the law or with policy change, the church wouldn't have anything to do with it, because they were just supposed to be uh, involved in developing your spirit. Well, here's the problem with that. Most of us don't know what the word spirit means, and we just use it. You ask 12 people what the spirit is, right? Describe the spirit. They can't do it, right? Nobody's ever looked it up, understood what it means. I don't know if they've meditated on it, and but we don't have a common agreement on many of the words that we
Mm-hmm.
use. And so when you don't have a common language, you can't have a common understanding. Therefore, you have 2,000 denominations, and you have 700 churches, and guys saying that they need to build a church right in front of yours. And so you can't really have any cooperation with that type of faith institution ethos or faith institution culture. It's a culture of division, rather than a culture of collaboration and communication. And that is the
Gotcha.
biggest thing that keeps the status quo, the traditional stuff, right? I would be embarrassed to call myself an apostle or a prophet or a reverend doctor if I was not having the kind of effect in the community that people would know it, even if I didn't call myself that.
Well, because it's not about the community; it's about status and quote. I mean, unfortunately, that's the truth. You got apostle this, apostle that, and I often say this, which includes me. I was like, you all, and all this stuff I think going on in the earth realm to me is an indictment on believers. And I say that because if Jesus said, I'm going to leave you something here that you should be doing greater things than I did. So that means miracles, transforming communities, and all of that. But you have a church every other house. And I know I'm exaggerating that. And I'm like, where is the power that
Right.
we're supposed to have as a people? And it's much more than I tell people fasting and praying, but you got to be. I often say this: every disciple that Jesus called was working. They were doing something.
Right.
And it's not, I mean, I'm just amazed at how laser dazzle
No, yeah, yeah. Listen,
it's
listen,
just
listen.
something to me.
No, listen. So we were taught a gospel coming up that emphasized what you don't do: don't smoke, don't drink, don't cuss, don't. Right. So don't sin. And God will bless you. Don't sin, pay your tithes, come church on Sunday, and God will bless you. That was the math. And if you don't do that, then God don't like ugly, right? We'd hear that kind of stuff, right? Okay, so the truth is that the pattern for how to develop a church is not followed. We actually follow the pattern of the synagogue and the Pharisees and the Sadducees, right? The idea,
Amen.
yeah, and that came out of their captivity. That's not even a thing that God ever sanctioned or invented. But when the churches started to develop, well, of course, I mean, it's a long history, but once the church in Rome, we call the Roman Catholic Church today,
Hmm.
once Constantine established that Christianity was going to be a state religion, and Roman Catholicism was sanctioned as the pillar of faith in the world, then they put together systems that marginalized people. They made them confess in cubicles. They made them, do rituals, and they made them
Yeah.
do penance, and then they made them, they flagellate, and they made them isolate in terms of relationships. So you had nuns, and you had none of this was biblical. None of it, right? But they said they had extra stuff. Well, so those rituals became the most important thing. So even when Protestantism, which we had these Protestant reformers like Jerome and Martin Luther, right? Even
Hmm.
with Protestantism, and you get the rise of John Wesley, and you get in the Black church you get Richard Allen and the African Methodist Episcopal movement, and then CME and all these things, right?
Yeah, and
Even
all
with
that.
that, we still kept so many rituals, and we made the rituals more important than the people, right? And so a person can walk into, this is what we've developed today, a person can walk into a church today and have a need, and nobody will ask them. Now, if you walk into my nonprofit door, you walk into Renew Birmingham, the first thing you're going to be asked is to sign in. And if you have a need, we're going to do it. You can tell us what you need, but we're going to do a needs assessment. Every single client is going to come in here and get a needs assessment, because a lot of times people won't tell you what they need. They'll tell you what they want, what they think they need, but until you do a real assessment, and see, that takes more than going to new member 101 class. See, new member 101 class is designed to tell you what we do, which is cool, but it doesn't tell us what you need. Because if your bills aren't being paid, and you showed up at church because you got an addiction problem, and it ain't got to be drugs, it
Yeah.
could be sex addiction, it could be gambling addiction,
Food,
and you can't
anything.
you can't you can't deal with your kids effectively, and don't nobody in there. You got this big old apostle up here, he's preaching fire, right? But nobody is asking you what you need and trying to get you that resource so that you can actually be on stable ground to begin to learn. This is why Jesus healed the eyes. You can't hear me if I don't give you what you need today,
Yeah. Well,
right?
you know what, Gerrel, this is something too I have to think about. And it's not about giving people, just like you say, giving people stuff, because
No.
if you don't, it's like you got to teach them how to fish and survive on their own. However, that's the one thing I don't like about the way church call itself evangelizing, especially if you're going through neighborhoods. I'm like, don't be quoting scriptures and asking people, are they saved? And you
Right.
haven't said, how you doing today?
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
Valerie. What's
Yes.
going on? I said, it may not be an avenue for you to even quote a scripture. I think we should be
Right.
more about being scripture. And I always tell people, If you go read about Jesus, people don't realize this. Jesus did not deal with the temple people until he was really getting them straight about something they were doing wrong. He was like, y'all can't keep these 10 laws and you don't wrote 5,000 more. No, do these two: love God and love your neighbor.
Yeah.
Now, I wasn't gonna go here, but I'm gonna have to since I said that. With this whole political climate we're in, love God and love your neighbor. It's not GOP, it's not Democratic, it's not independent. It's if you say you're a believer, love God and love your neighbor.
Yeah.
Love God and love your neighbor. So,
And it's
but it's
interesting
a
because
but with that.
yeah, so people it's interesting to me because I'm you know I come through crack addiction, I come through violent crime, I come through spending half my life in prison, and I'm definitely undereducated, poorly informed, and poorly socialized. I'm unexceptional in every way except that I'm able to do bad things and cause bad things to happen. So anybody should be able to affect their community, um, should who has poured over scripture. As this is what I'm gonna say, this anybody who has poured over scripture and got credentialing would
Mm-hmm.
understand that unity among the faith community is a basic, right? Knowing one another enough to be able to minister to each other's needs is a basic in developing a community. Otherwise, you simply have a cult, right? You have a cult of people just, following and parroting, right? Until you know the people. If you can go stand 300 deep in the same building, sing the same song for 40 years and don't know the people around you, don't have never had any interest in taking care of the needs and advancing, it's the reason why your church is dying. It's the reason why right now that you got 14 members and they're all 70, 75, 80 years old, and unless they make their grandkid come, because unity is a basic, relationship is a basic for church development. And so if you don't get that along with your rituals, right, then what you end up is with these dead churches.
Wow. Wow. I mean, and it's a lot of that. I think I'm thinking about the song "Wake Up Everybody."
Yeah, no more sleeping. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
yeah,
Harold Melvin in the Blue Notes.
yeah, yeah.
Teddy
So I,
Pendergrass
I'm
in the
I
lead.
actually have that cue. It's a different version of it, but you will
Yeah,
like it. I'm gonna play it
yeah.
at the end of the show. Uh,
So let me tell you this, because I wanted the answer to your question. I'm kind of wordy and it was kind of long, but I want some people to understand so badly that you cannot expect good things if you do not invest good things, and if you disregard that things are happening and all you want to do is rail or scream and complain about what's happening without making an investment. What you're doing is like if you live in the city of Birmingham and let's call it a pot of nasty stuff. We just call it nasty stuff. And you see all the
mhm.
nasty stuff and you don't want to start shoveling to get that nasty stuff out from around you. That just doesn't make any sense. You've got to start examining, how you think about life. If I live in a neighborhood and I live in a city that's declining and I'm a grown man, and I don't have any inspiration to do something and collaborate with somebody to do something. I put the responsibility of the revitalization of our city squarely on the shoulders of our residents. And it's important to understand that government cannot change the culture in your neighborhood. They cannot introduce you to your neighbors. They cannot build the relationships and establish the neighborhood standards
Well, wait a minute
that
now.
lead
You
us
got
there.
to be wrong because if we get more police, if we make more laws, if we build bigger prisons, we're gonna
Yeah.
solve all this.
Well, if that was the case, then it would have been solved because we've definitely built more prisons. We definitely have. We've had so many police that nobody wants to be the police no more, right? Because they cause problems,
Yeah,
right?
because the chief just resigned. Well,
Yeah,
he's gonna retire.
but understand policing, and I'm not talking about any individual police department or any policing began in corruption, and it's very difficult to. It's just like the United States government, right? I mean, we could go deep with the things that are wrong with what we do that. Um, and why those things contribute to our decline. Some
Yeah.
very, very basic things. Expecting police to be preventative is an error in thinking. Police are designed to address issues that happen after the fact. They're not designed for for preventive. The only prevention comes from families, schools, and churches. Why? Because these people are supposed to be there in the
Yeah.
community when the police ain't, creating culture, right? Establishing programs that address problems. And it ain't like we ain't got the money. It ain't like we ain't got the time. It ain't like we don't have the intellectual capital. I am amazed at how people can think of other people's children that are struggling to put their lives together, don't have all the pieces to be able to make good decisions. They're out here running the street. I'm surprised that somebody could look at that and just say, them children, boy, them children gone. No, no, no. Those children are going to kill each other, or they may even kill me, right?
Well, look, I
In the
just
worst
popped
case
some
scenario.
up. Let's, because this leads into you. I got your look. You see, I took good notes from the event.
Yeah.
Uh, you talked about the main contributors to crime are fear, apathy, independency.
Yes. Yeah. So, what I said was the main contributors to cultural decline
Okay.
are fear, apathy, and dependency. And now those things contribute to the behaviors that become criminal, but not just that. There are other behaviors that are not criminal necessarily, like throwing trash in the street, in the alley, not cutting your grass, right? Not painting your house, doing the type of repairs that would maintain property values. There's a whole bunch of things that happen as a result of fear, apathy, and dependency. So in it's so prison like because that's how prison is run, right? You take
Yeah.
somebody off the street, right? You scare them to death when they first come in, shave their heads, you holler at them, and take their stuff, throw them in a cell, tell them that the number is the most important thing, and they go into this hostile environment. In some places in prison in Alabama, that somebody, you got a homeboy, he's gonna hand you a shank right as soon as you get there, right? And so there's this fear, and then they tell you to stay out of folks' business, right? Keep your nose clean,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you might see somebody being stabbed to death over there, but you stay out of that business because that ain't you and you don't want it to be you, right? So now you're conditioned to be apathetic to other people's pain, right?
Okay.
And you're dependent because they're going to tell you in the institution, you're going to be told when to go eat, when you can sleep, when you can go play, when you can use the phone, when you can shower, all that. So you're dependent and you don't make a whole bunch of decisions, right? Because everybody's making the decisions for you. That's prison.
Gotcha.
Out here, what happens is this: fear of the violence that's in the street, right? Fear of having bad things happen. You look at the news, you get conditioned to think. There's a YouTube documentary that was just released that probably had a lot of people across the nation thinking that Birmingham is just this wild place where there's children
Yeah.
running through the street talking about killing everybody, and that's not Birmingham. There are definitely pockets where there are groups of children that are homeless and groups of children that are hanging out with drug dealers. They don't have any parents that they're definitely though, but that's not the city of Birmingham. That's one aspect. But the fear that it generates, right, over time will cause you to be apathetic. You put your burglar bars up, you look out the window, hope the people around you don't hurt you, right? And you start living in that apathy now. If somebody gets killed, you shake your head, but you're not interested in
Yeah.
doing your schools fail, you shake your head. They dump trash in the alley, you shake your head. And then if you're dependent, what you'll do if you don't want to be a good neighbor that facilitates these types of things, what you do is you call the police or you call the city councilor or you call the right, whoever you need to call, and you say things like this, and I call it learned helplessness, which is a social work term
Yeah.
that becomes learned hopelessness, right? It sounds like this. It's what learned helplessness sounds like. The mayor need to do something about this. City council need to do something about this. I
Yeah.
don't know why the police don't do something about this. And all the time, you're going to the neighborhood association meeting making complaints rather than developing strategies. See, that's nonsensical. You got a whole hour, hour and a half to actually develop strategies as a collective, right? To be able to deploy in your own community right there at the neighborhood association meeting. But you're so caught up in the structure, You read the minutes from the last meeting. We're gonna take this coming up here. We need to build a sign. We need to buy a sign, right? And somebody, and it's just a waste of time because no strategy ever comes out of it, and no request ever goes to city council that makes any difference. And that's been the data, the metrics that have been continuing. It's a failing system. So fear, apathy, and dependency become seed beds for whoever wants to come into the community and do whatever because you're giving them permission, right? So if
Okay.
I got a bunch of malady, a bunch of mental health issues, and I'm poorly socialized, I done come up in these schools and I can barely read, and I got 6 kids, and I'm a single parent, and I'm angry as it is in the first place because I butchered up my life, right? So I holler, I drink, I cuss, I smoke, I whatever, and
Yeah.
nobody says anything to me, and then I bring my friends, right, and nobody say anything about that. So now our neighborhood is continually, now you got to move because you didn't integrate that person into the community when they first moved in because you looked at them and said they.
Oh, I don't know what happened to Gerrel. I know with his got unstable. He'll pop back on. But that was some good stuff. But we're gonna keep it moving. As a fact, while he's gone, I'm actually gonna show this video about the culture of change. Hopefully it will play and we will be fine. Get down here to where it is.
Birmingham Police Department says the root of violence in the city is a cultural problem. ABC 3340's Austin Pratt spoke with community activists about this issue. Austin, do they agree with this?
Kira, activists I spoke with say they do agree. They believe everyone feels the need to carry guns and people are quick to resort to violence over disagreements.
When you ask a young person today about a gun, about what do they want, the first thing they say is, I want to purchase a gun. And I've questioned why.
Watanji Peak-Feeney lost her son to gun violence 8 years ago.
It was horrific. Just to endure any mother, any father enduring a loss of such, losing a child to gun violence, being murdered and shot down in the streets.
She says the shootings in Birmingham come from a culture of violence where it's common to have guns and use them to settle conflicts. Steve Green, senior pastor of More Than Conquerors Church, has seen the problem firsthand and says it's bigger than Birmingham.
The culture problem, as we see, not just in Birmingham, but across the nation, there's violence, gun violence.
Birmingham city leaders believe preventing the city's shootings is often out of the hands of the police department and falls on neighborhoods, families, and communities. In a news release from the mayor's office in response to calls for BPD Chief Scott Thurman to step down, they affirmed this stance, saying, quote, "The homicide problem we currently face goes beyond policing and policy and requires resolve from the community." Activists say when it comes to fixing a culture of violence, it starts with teaching the children.
You have to prepare them for when those days come to deal with conflict resolution, how to walk away from a fight, how to turn the other cheek, those kind of things.
Everybody has to be involved. It's more than the police. The police can't do it by themselves.
They say the culture of violence extends past preventing crime. Activists and police saying there's also a no snitching culture, often keeping officers from doing their jobs and solving crimes. Kira?
Well, ownership in underserved communities.
I ate a cupcake while you were away.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's what you was doing. You went to eat. I
No,
wonder what happened.
it cut me off, and
Oh, well, look, clean your mouth.
yeah, that's my mustache, I think.
Look, but I want to share that with them because I thought that was very good. And basically what you said, the culture, it's going to take a cultural shift. So, Gerrel, tell the people how they can get involved with Renew Birmingham if they
So
choose to be a part of the solution.
right. So again, four things that I didn't really finish earlier. One is that we access other organizations to provide resources in this community. We do that by shrinking the service area. So we don't serve the whole city of Birmingham, Inslee, Highlands, Wylam, and Tuxedo. It's 4 neighborhoods, 8,000 residences, and we're able to cover that by canvassing, which is the third thing that we do differently. We don't wait for people to come to us. Jesus didn't. He canvassed the neighborhood, so we canvass the neighborhood. We want
So you
everybody to have
actually
access.
you going where the harvest is. Is that what you're saying?
Right,
Okay,
right,
I
right,
thought you're
right.
supposed to build a building and invite them to come to church
Yeah, how's that working out for you?
and
Right.
join small groups and you know what I'm
Listen,
saying?
I don't want to sound like I'm just wanting to drag the rest of the church community because, oh, you're doing the thing the wrong way. What I'm saying is this: I'm a Christian, you're a Christian. If I'm sharing with you that, hey, there's a way to do this that's more closely related to scripture than we're doing, it's a lot more effort. It won't be just in church on Sunday. We'll be doing life with people, and people are going to lie to us, and people are going to lie on us, and we're going to, have some problems. But we should be willing to work through it because the first century church was. All those letters that we call scripture, or many of them were written as ways to organize the community in Israel that were followers of Christ, but they were trying to change the world, and God's agenda never
Yeah.
changed.
And
So.
it was radical, but the thing about it,
But
it's a
let me
blend.
before you do you asked me a question. Let me go ahead and answer that
It's a
question.
blend.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a blend, right? And the idea of affecting the community is the outcome on earth. You should be
Yeah.
able to either cause good trouble. People should hate
Yeah.
you for wanting to change the quality of life. The government might even come after you, right? But the point is that if you're not affecting people in your daily life, then you're probably not being moved by that spirit that made you shout and fall out in the front of the church the other day.
Well, you know what? You mentioned something and you said it at the meeting the other night. The Bible says there's no greater love than a man who will lay down his life for a friend. Meaning you may have to die. I was hiking this past Saturday, and something about when I hike, I always Harriet Tubman.
Now
I be thinking,
wait before you get into that story. Now you asked me to tell people how to get.
yeah,
Uh,
I'm gonna let you do that. But I'm
okay, go
just
ahead. Go
saying,
ahead.
going back to you got to be willing to take risks, and you
You
may
do.
lose something tangible. That
Yeah.
you may
Yeah.
lose something tangible for the long term game, and that's what we don't have enough people that are willing to say, I'm willing to lose so the next generation can win, so we can try to right this ship, so we can make things better rather than regressing. I had a conversation with my 97 or 98-year-old cousin who lives in Inslee, and I asked her to do a comparison of what she felt like life was now compared to prior to Black people having our pseudo rights. That's what I call them, our pseudo rights. And she said today is more detrimental and hurtful to her because she said, Valerie, we were fighting for something we didn't have. We weren't able to just go in stores or live where we wanted to live. She said, now you all have been afforded that. And now it's like they're trying to roll back the hands of
Yeah.
time for you to have experience. It's like they laid the big feast before you. And now it's like,
Yeah.
nah, we're going to take all of that back.
Well,
So,
that again, and I keep coming back this because I'm big on wearing personal responsibility. I am not a victim, right?
yeah,
So if I let my rights get rolled back, because now understand this, voting blocks are what move policy,
yeah,
right? But if I can't create a voting block, if I can't create a friend, if I can't introduce myself to a neighbor, then I can't create a voting block. If all I'm gonna do is go to this community meeting and complain, I can't create a voting block. Voting blocks were created in churches many times
yeah,
by people like King as a result of everybody getting on the same page. And whether they were Methodist, Baptist, Pentecostal, whatever, we need to get on the same page, right? And if people could see these crises as things that we need to get on the same page about, and that same page needs to involve a community engagement strategy, and churches are specifically positioned to be able to affect community in ways that government can't. and we just don't take advantage of that opportunity. Many of our leaders, are what we call leaders, are not able to influence people in a way that they can galvanize them. I have more people coming into my front doors than are going into many churches over here, right? Because they're actually going to get resources and they're actually going to get invested in
Well,
the
they don't.
revitalization of their
Well,
community.
look, if they can't pull their giving record, they may not get nothing at the church.
Well, come on,
I'm just
somebody.
saying.
Hey,
I'm just
listen,
saying.
I know, and it's a sickness. It's a sickness that we don't talk about, and then when we do talk about, it's kind of tongue in cheek. What we let ourselves get away with in irresponsibility and not doing. The Bible says when a man knows to do good and don't, to him it is sin.
It's a
And
sin.
I'm
Yeah.
saying that apathy is the biggest sin because it makes room for all the other stuff, right? The apathy won't say nothing. Snitch, no snitch culture. That's what apathy is. Mind my own business, stay in my own lane. Yeah, because you're trying to save your own life. Jesus made it clear that if you love your life, and if you love this life, you're gonna lose it. You're gonna
Yeah,
lose
yeah,
it.
you gotta be willing to lay
Right.
it down. You gotta be willing to
Yeah.
lay it down.
Right. So that trauma that we see kids experiencing and elders experiences, when you don't have the heart to get invested in that, I don't see how a person can say that they have the heart of God. That's me, and that's an
Yeah.
opinion that I believe is based on scripture. There's no way to look at a hurting person that a Christian can look at a hurting person. And that's when when you talk about the politics, when I see people Christians identify themselves as a party. I am a Republican. I am a Democrat.
Oh
Well, I'm
wow.
like, you messed
I
up.
don't have more than that.
If you believe that any one of these wings, left or right, is not a part of the same bird, right? If you fall for that trap, right? Well, that's just you not paying attention to what's going on, which is a lot of what our problems are. But if you want to get involved with Renew Birmingham, you can come down and volunteer. Doesn't matter where you come from. We're going to serve our service area. We believe that if we can have success in this, which was at one time one of the worst areas in Birmingham, if not the worst, if we can have success here, then we can replicate this around the city. We can do the same thing around the city. So you can come down. You can call us at 205-201-4275. I'm hoping you'll put that number up
Oh
on the
yes,
screen at some
it's
point.
been in there put in multiple times. The address, the
Okay.
website, and the
Yeah.
email.
Yes,
I'm
and you
on
can
my good
email us.
job.
That's what's up. You can email us, and we definitely will respond. You can come down and see us. I love talking with people. I'm here. I make myself accessible because I don't want people to think that I think I'm some kind of superhero that's gonna come down off the mountain and make every. No, I live here. I'm from here. Right. I'm just a dude, one of the worst dudes that Inslee's ever produced. Right. So if
He
that's
like
who,
Paul, y'all. He the chief. And you know what though? I said that, and we gonna end the show. But that is something. You all, I'm convinced. When you look at historically, Jesus didn't call nobody from the synagogue. I mean, he was those radical people. You think about Paul, a murderer, hated the Christians, became the greatest church planter. So he flipped the passion he had in the world. He flipped it and used it in a good way. So listen, y'all go talk to y'all pastors and tell them to come out and do something.
yeah,
I mean, get involved, just hang out, open up your church to the community, give the kids a safe space, somewhere they can
yeah,
just exhale and relax. I tell people, I don't know if I would have gotten caught up into crime or something had the opportunity presented itself with me being a first generation college person coming to Birmingham. Had my paths crossed with maybe the wrong people, it's a possibility. I don't know. I can say right now at almost 59, no, I wouldn't have done that. But I don't know. If they had caught me on that day when I was at UAB, I ain't had a dime in my pocket. I don't know which way
right.
I would have gone. And so we've got to start seeing these young people and even their parents, those we got this generational poverty cycle going and this helplessness uh, for who God created them to be. And He did not create them to be doing the things they're doing. He created them to greatness, but we've got to help them see that greatness. And that's not by
Yeah,
preaching the word, that's by being the word. So I want y'all to go get your
yeah,
Bibles and I want you to start reading from Matthews, at least to John. Read about Jesus. See what he did. He hung out with the commoners, the crooked people, and just befriended them and let them know why they should follow him. If
Putting the
we
neighbor
don't give
back,
people, yeah, and neighbor, that I
putting the
like you
neighbor.
for you. I
Yeah,
like you
I,
for you.
I, I
So
mean that's a skill set, and we'll definitely train people about how to greet your neighbors and how to do integration and how to maintain an atmosphere in your community. We would love to have people come down and I'll definitely show you. Like I said, I moved into Inslee Highlands in 2017. It had the highest number of homicides. When we rolled out services in 2023, we had a in the first 3 quarters we had a 43% decrease, 45% decrease in homicide, and by the end of the year it had been reduced to 23%, but that was still a decrease
good.
while the rest of the city was on fire. Right now we're on track to have another decrease in homicides. We're too short of where we were last year, and if we hold out to the end of the year we'll actually have another decrease in homicides over here. Now no nonprofit measures themselves on them those metrics because you can't really control them, and I'm not saying that we're controlling. I'm saying that there is an impact that social influence can have on a culture and a community that cannot be undervalued.
Gotcha. And I'm gonna play this song and then we're gonna close out. I want you to hear this. This is a new revamp version. Wake up, everybody. No more sleeping in bed.
Yeah, yeah. Ooh, listen. Okay, Lord, I really wanna know who you think we are fooling silly. Us and I realize we are schooling Billy, Brittany and Braxton. I took that assessment from how we are acting, cause we lacking compassion for each other. So quick to cancel a sister or a brother. We just be approaching our problems with petty, and we are not ashamed. We celebrated confetti in front of the next gen like we don't know we modeling. Negative emotions our future leaders are bottling. Stuff that can't save them, asking what we gave them. Nothing to lean on, just defeat like an ottoman. Crazy, but I know we can make it right. If only we can wake up the teachers to shine a light. I asked the Lord what it would have to be. He guided me to end up peace. I said, wake up, everybody. No more sleeping in bed. No more sleeping. No more backwards thinking. Time for thinking ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There is so much hatred, war and poverty. Okay, I started thinking a little deeper and discovered that it's way too many secrets we keep covered. And I ain't talking about exposing what's dark, but exposing what's right. If we want to spark a spike or an upswing in what we see in our society, undeniably share the truth like a diary for everybody to read. Give everybody a seed. We all water each other, then everybody succeed. It sounded like a dream, don't it? But I can't help it that I'm optimistic. I want the teacher to incite the people for a future that is not ballistic. Problems ahead like Medusa, but all we need is a real solution. I asked the Lord what it would have to be. He guided me to inner peace. I said, wake up, everybody. No more sleeping in bed. No more backwards thinking. Time for thinking ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There is so much hatred, war and poverty. I said, wake up, everybody. No more sleeping in bed. No more backwards thinking. Time for thinking ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There is so much hatred, war and poverty. Won't you help me? Won't you help me? Won't you help me understand your plan? Take me home. Take me home. Give everybody a seat. Take me. We all wanted each other, then everybody succeed. Give everybody a seat. Give everybody a seat. We all wanted each other, then everybody succeed.
Hey y'all, that guy speaks. That's my spiritual daughter. And anybody, y'all might have recognized Melody. She sings with Kurt Franklin. And they did that remake a couple years ago in the midst of the pandemic. You know, they say we won't. So, hey, having what his name, Melvin told us long time ago, wake up. So we woke now a little bit, not complete. We got one eye open. The other one gonna pop over in a minute. Okay. So look. So what's your final words you want to leave with the people?
So a lot of people, have used the term a product of their environment when talking about young people.
Yeah.
And I guess I would have been referred to as that as well, armed robbery, escape, and homicide.
All of that.
So you look at my history and you would say, yeah, he's a product of his environment. But here's what I believe. I don't believe that environment affects behavior as much as behavior affects environment first. Not saying that environment doesn't affect behavior, but it's not the environment, it's the people in the environment. And when people start wearing responsibility for the environment that we create, get what I'm saying now? Because
Yeah.
ain't nothing happening to you, city of Birmingham. Ain't nothing happening to you. You're producing your own ills. You're producing your own maladies. It's the way that we interact with each other as people. So if you don't want to be a product of the environment, then be a promise of the environment. That's what this sign says back here. That's what I like to think of myself as. Not a product of my environment, but a promise. And I invite anybody who's got some intellectual capital to share, some sweat equity, and financial resources to move back. We got some property for you to buy down here. Land bank's got a bunch of. You can build your house, man. But we really need leaders, people who in our community can come back, because a lot of y'all from Ensley in the first place, right? So come on back and let's build up our
Come
community. I
home.
know
That's what
that's
you're
a big
saying.
ask. Yeah, I know that's a big ask. It's a big ask, man. But I wouldn't ask you if I hadn't done it.
Done it. Well, look, you all. Another one thing I'm going to share with my guests for next week, because this is part of the problem too. We got to deal with the mental health aspect of what's going on. So we're going to have Miss Tanya Gooden. She's a nurse practitioner who certified in women's health and psychiatry. So she's going to be here next week talking to us about our mental health. So it's a lot. It's a lot, but look, I've always been a glass half full kind of person. So I may have my moments of like, woo Lord, but hey, I'm coming up fighting. As a matter of fact, I got this mantra where a girl wrote a poem for me. As a matter of fact, Birmingham's poet laureate, Salam Green, and just a conversation, and one of the taglines described me as a boat tipper, a change maker, a woman not afraid to revolt. And I know revolt has a negative connotation, but there's some places, y'all, you got to
You got to
revolt to
revolt.
make
Yeah,
change. And you ain't
yeah.
got to be angry and hostile, but when you speak out against wrong, it's going to be viewed as a revolt. So it's in my DNA. My mom and dad, they those people. I thank God they lived to birth us, because I asked them one time, how did y'all survive not being murdered with some of the stands they made?
Well,
But when God
here's the thing.
calls you, he protects you.
Well, I don't. Oh, I'm gonna give you a little bit of pushback.
Okay,
I'm gonna give
push
you.
back.
When God calls you, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a famous author who was um, he was captured by the Nazis. He was a preacher that captured by
Hmm.
the Nazis when he went back home to Germany to fight their opposition, to
Hmm.
speak against them, preach against them. So they locked him up, and he wrote this book called "Cost of Discipleship." And in it, the phrase that stood out to me the most is, when Christ calls a man, he asks him to come and die. Now, that is definitely the perspective of someone who is going to the fire,
Yeah.
like a first responder, right? You know what I'm saying? And we celebrate first responders, but I don't think that we understand that Christians are the first responders from heaven. We're the ones that run into the fire while everybody else is running away. We're trying
Yeah,
to
I agree.
snatch people out of the fire while everybody else is looking, wagging their finger, pointing and laughing, right? Because we know that the weakest links in the community will determine the strength of the community. And Jesus
Most
did too.
definitely. Yeah. Well, look,
So
hey, look. I accept your pushback, because in the context I was saying that is that the assignment that God has for you to do, you're gonna complete it. Now, if it's time for you, if the end of it is for you to exit this earth, is it. But the problem is most of us don't take on the assignment.
Yes.
That's the problem.
Because we trying to live.
We trying to live. Well, look, y'all,
Scared to die.
I'm gonna let Gerrel go and eat because he hungry, eat donuts and watching on
Man, I forgot that the camera was on. Man, I'm so hungry, I forgot.
Look, the conversation is art. We say just hanging out like friends. But look, if you listen, y'all don't got this information. If you don't reach out and show up if you don't want to do Renew Birmingham, as he said, there are other organizations. Get involved. Start with your local schools. Get involved with that. Because that's the only way to stop a failing school is to show up and support things. So y'all